LEGO sent me this LEGO Ideas Dungeons and Dragons set for review, and while it looks like a regular retail product at the surface, it's only when you start digging deeper that you understand this is actually an adventure you can actually play, the same way you would any kind of Dungeons and Dragons adventure, the popular role-playing game that is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Because of the very nature of the set, this is probably one of the hardest reviews I've ever had to make, due to the fact that some of the stuff that I'll be addressing during the video might spoil the built-in adventure, so if you are hoping to play it, please be advised. The 4 different building instructions do a good enough job of explaining what Dungeons and Dragons is all about, and how this set came to be, a LEGO Ideas building competition done 2 years ago, out of which this entry 1 ended up becoming a slightly different LEGO model. The cover design for the building instructions were also a competition in itself, and I have to admit it looks kinda great. The review will be focused more on the model rather than the playable adventure itself, which will be available for download on LEGO's website using this QR code. Not only that, a paper version of the adventure will also be available to redeem on the LEGO Insiders Rewards Center for 2,700 points on April 1st, which is kinda great and gave me a better grasp and understanding about Dungeons and Dragons, where basically a dungeon master will run and describe an interactive story to a team of up to 4 players that needs to decide how to explore imaginary locations like castles or dungeons, discovering treasure, leveling up and fighting monsters with the help of dice rolls to determine if they succeed or fail in their actions. The adventure guide outlines the entire playthrough and has character sheets and blank pages for note-taking, which Dungeons and Dragons players will surely find very useful. The player characters in this LEGO model slash adventure are the Dwarf Cleric, the Elf Wizard, the Gnome Fighter, and the Orc Rogue. You have spare parts for character editing, allowing you to choose between male and female for all 4 of them, and customization opportunities with the Elf Wizard include 3 different spell tiles, the Gnome has a long sword option, and the Orc a crossbow instead of the double daggers. The brick-built enemies you'll have to face during the adventure are skeletons, 3 in total, with one having this awesome cape which is dual-sided with a shimmering effect on one of the sides. I don't really get the gelatinous cube, but apparently also a foe to be faced. And then there's a Owlbear, relatively small model and not that poseable. The creepiest enemy of the lot has to be the Beholder, with all of its different eye stalks printed around tiles by the way, as is the main eye. The Displacer Beast kinda reminds me of the Thanator from Avatar. There's 2 mimics, creatures that can take the shapes of common objects like chests or beds in this case, which is kinda fun. Also featured in one of the teasers for this set, in a much larger scale, that's actually a LEGO set of its own, but more on that later on. And finally, Cinder Owl the Red Dragon. I have built many Ninjago dragons over the years, but I gotta say this one beats most of those by a long shot. Posability on the limbs is quite limited, but these, as is the case with every other creature, are not meant to be played with, but rather models to be shown players as a physical object of the things they'll be fighting, I think. And so it kinda makes sense, even though you can still pose it if you want. The joints of the very long tail section are quite impressive and movable, while the neck and head are quite stiff, with the ball joint not even being able to handle the weight attached to it. The piece usage for the head though was quite inspired, and the wedges where the eyes are at are printed, which is great to see. I love the tan underside of the old creature, as I do the spikes over the spine, and even the cloth wings seen from the underside with all of those Technic connectors work quite well. I am however not at all convinced with the way the cloth for wings was attached with pneumatic T-elements, as they look completely out of place in my opinion. But putting that aside, this is definitely a great looking LEGO dragon. And with all of that out of the way, I'll now focus on the main model, which looks great from the front at least. People hoping for a fully enclosed model will need to think again, as the entire back of the model is completely open, which serves D&D playing purposes right, as you need to clearly see the places where the adventure takes place, though pure LEGO fans with other interests at stake may find this a bit underwhelming. But still, the front scene looks amazing, with the inn at the corner with a beautifully shaped chimney in one corner, or a very clever angled section in another. In front of a ruined tower, LEGO Castle fans probably hoped to have been made whole, next to remnants of a bridge and a small castle wall section of sorts, with some landscaping under it and all around. Even though there's lots of different shapes and colors being used, different types of terrain, plants and so on, the whole thing looks surprisingly coherent, displaying very nicely as a medieval scene of sorts on its own, or together with sets like the medieval market square, the Seven Dwarfs cottage, Lion Knight's castle, or even the Hocus Pocus house. Castle fans are being spoiled way too much, I think. The whole thing can be split into 3 different sections for easier inspection and exploration, making it a model you'll want to be very careful with when moving around, preferably one section at a time. The inn being the smallest has lots of different details that may look random, but more often than not all have a purpose for the adventure, which really impresses me, as designing both a LEGO set and a game of sorts at the same time must have been really challenging for the designer. The top floor can be removed for easier access to the ground floor, and the same goes for the roof on the first floor. The bridge section is probably my favorite out of the 3 as a LEGO build due to the brilliant angled bridge, or how playful yet meaningful the landscaping is. Looking at it from the back though reveals a cave, it seems, with lots of different items lying on the floor, all seemingly random, but remember, this is an adventure, so I think we can only really appreciate this to the fullest by playing the adventure and knowing the meaning behind every little object, enemy or weapon. The bottom of the tower section is a continuation of the dungeon from before, seemingly plain looking but with a bunch of things to uncover, with a stair built at the center that leads to the first actual floor of the tower that can actually be removed. There's some sort of shrine here, a few mysterious items at odd places, with another set of stairs that leads to a half-wrecked room with a few more items and spell tiles like the ones the elf wizard has, and finally at the last floor an egg surrounded by a couple candles. I tried to keep the model review as spoiler free as I could, but for the next section I'll showcase a few things that feel really important within the scope of the adventure, so if you plan on playing it, I would skip this part of the video. The key up here is not random at all, and moving it will open a trapdoor. These potions or this book down here aren't there by mistake, I'm sure, and the bridge section is covering up a lot of secrets, like a hidden key and coins on the floor. This tree is no regular tree, but an awakened one that will talk to the players. This entire section can be removed, revealing a few items that feel really important, as is the hidden entrance to the dungeon section. In this cell here there's a humanoid dragonborn locked up, and there's an extra character included in this set that plays a major role in the adventure and funnily enough only shows its back on the box here and here. So with most of the spoiler stuff out of the way, I can truly appreciate the extra effort that went into partnering with Wizards of the Coast to develop both a LEGO model and a Dungeons & Dragons adventure in one go. As a LEGO fan, I really appreciate the build, the dragon and the looks of it all when finished, but I am jealous of D&D players who will be able to look past the building experience and looks of the model and enjoy the set in ways I never will. This would have been the perfect opportunity to make official LEGO branded D&D dices, as the Mimic chest, the LEGO set featured in one of the teasers for this set, does open and seems to be a good size to keep them in. At the time of recording the video, I was not made aware of how people will be able to get their hands on this particular product, but I'm assuming it might be a gift with purchase you'll get if you order your LEGO Ideas Dungeons & Dragons set when it releases in just a few days on April 1st. $360 for 3,745 pieces is a far better deal when compared to the Polaroid camera or the Orient Express from the same theme. I'm very curious to see what the reception to this LEGO set will be by fans. Are there enough D&D players out there with a love for LEGO and willing to spend this kind of money for an entry-level adventure? Are Castle fans willing to do the same with a set that has a completely open back and would require major rebuilding to be usable to expand their displays? Let me know what you think, and I'll see you all in the next one. Technic thingy or something Star Wars? You decide.